I want to start this video off with a confession, a three-part confession, and it is very much related to complacency. So confession part one is that my fiance Felicity and I have been engaged for 3.5 years. 3.5 years of when's the wedding, Campbell? When are you two tying the knot, Campbell? If I die before my son gets married, it's your fault, Campbell. You know, just the classics. It's weird, man. It never really occurred to me that asking the question would lead to this big expensive event. In my head it went, will you marry me? Scene missing. Happily married together forever. But in some good news, we have finally picked a date. Yay. Unfortunately, this is where confession 2 comes in. We were motivated to pick the date out of emergency and tragedy. Back in April, my mum got in this freak mountain biking accident. She broke quite a lot of bones in her body. She lost a lot of blood and she had to get helicoptered out of an area to a hospital. It was all really scary. When we got the news, Fliss and I immediately booked a ticket over to New Zealand where she lives to help her with her recovery. So for context's sake, my mum is the biggest campaigner for us to have a wedding, and also she's very project-minded. So we decided that to get her mind off the pain, we would all plan the wedding together. To plan a wedding, you have to pick a date. And we did that, and that's pretty cool. But here's where confession 3 comes in. It's not the first date we've picked. We'd actually picked a day in 2020, so we were amongst all those weddings that got Corona cancelled. But unlike, I think, everybody else, we were really relieved. We're like, oh no, now we can't do that gigantic, expensive, stressful event. Oh, rats. But this time was different. I think after Mum had her accident, we were hit with that reminder that life is precious and short. And if I was on my deathbed looking back, yeah, I think I'd love to have a wedding. It's like a quintessential human experience, and I want that. I want to know what it's like. Plus, I don't know, love Felicity, whatever, shut up. So operating with our previous attitudes toward a wedding, we realized that we were both pretty complacent about it. So in order to overcome that, what we had to do is not say we're having a wedding a year from now. We had to say we're gonna do it much sooner. We decided that we were gonna plan a wedding in 10 weeks. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. Complacency and how to overcome it. That's kind of weird. I'm gonna split this video into 3 parts. The first part will be why we do it. The second part will be a thought experiment with some journaling questions for you. And the third part will be called the cup list, a practical exercise I've come up with that you can employ immediately after watching this. Amazing. I'm making this video because I think that complacency, if it's unmet, has the power to ruin anyone's life. I define it as feeling comfortable with not living up to your potential. And just to clear things up about the concept of potential, there is no one set path for any of us. I think that potential can be a really destructive concept for a lot of people, particularly when we're in this internet environment that tells you to live your best life. Where I think living your best life gets it wrong is that it implies there is only one best life. What I'm talking about is just living a better life. Not the best, just better. So that's what I mean when I say potential. Just before we dive in, a quick but necessary disclaimer. This video is just what's worked for me. It's just my techniques. I'm not an expert, just a dude with a YouTube channel. Also, I don't have a chronic illness. I don't have kids. I'm no longer looking after a sick parent. So I'm relatively free time-wise. So if what I'm saying doesn't apply to you, there is nothing wrong with you at all. So don't feel any guilt or shame. Just cherry pick the stuff that does work. I do believe a lot of it will apply to most people, but I don't know for sure. With that said, let's dive right in. Complacency and how to overcome it. Part 1. Why do we do it? Why are we complacent? Complacency comes so natural to so many of us, myself obviously included, and that is because it is natural. It's human nature. To feel comfortable with unexplored potential is to pick the easiest option, and picking the easiest option has a huge evolutionary advantage. Cast your mind back, way back to our ancestors of prehistory, and imagine that they're given 2 options for shelter. The cave they're currently in, or a nicer cave 20 miles away. They're gonna pick the cave they're currently in every time. It conserves energy, which gives them more time to, get food and make some sweet cave art or whatever they did back then. It doesn't matter that the nicer cave is 20 miles away, because 20 tiring miles of predators just isn't worth it. Fast forward a whole bunch of millennia and we have Jessie. This is Jessie. Jessie's current cave is her lifestyle. She wakes up at 11, rolls out of bed at 2, and drags herself to a call center job that she hates. When Jessie gets home, she drinks red wine in bed and falls asleep watching top 10 videos with her cat Ralph. I've definitely been Jessie. Jessie's in her current cave and it's safe. It's comfortable. 20 miles away is a life where Jessie is unrecognizable. It's Jessie's potential. It's a life where she wakes up early, does a little bit of yoga, and then goes to work at her cat cafe that she owns called Cappuccino. Good one, Jessie. Before finishing her day with an afternoon hike with her cat Ralph in her backpack. It's a super possible path for her, but thanks to 20 miles of modern day predators, she just doesn't take it. So now the question in your head might be, well, how does she take it? How, less metaphorically, can we actually do this? How can I go from complacent to not complacent? How can I live my better life? Well, that's what I'm gonna try cover off with the next 2 parts of this video. We might be very different, but here is my method. Part 2. The thought experiment. I'm gonna phrase this in terms of journaling, but do whatever works for you. 1. Write down all the big things in life that you vaguely want, but you haven't made a plan for. My list of big, vague life wants includes buying a house by the beach, having kids, touring a live show, making a board or card game, living in New York, having some sort of TV show, making movies. They're things that I want, but not things that I've made concrete steps towards. 2. Fast forward a lot of years, like heaps of years, like all of your years until you're on your deathbed. Mentally put yourself there and then describe your life looking back at it as if you had done all of those vague wants from question 1. If I had had kids, bought the beach house, made movies, how would I describe my life? We're gonna call this person Future You 1. All right, now flip the script and imagine that you took action on none of these and you're looking back at your life and somebody says, describe it. We're gonna call this person Future You 2. Take a little pause and just remember that you can become either of these people. 3. Write down all of the advice that Future You 1, the person who's done all of those big life things, would give to you now. Then write down all the regrets that you think Future You 2, the person who hasn't done any of them, would have. If they could go back in time to where you are now, what would they do differently? Now, usually in this section, I find that a handful of big life things bubble to the surface, and I actually realize that some are more important to me than others. For example, I don't need to climb Mount Everest. I would like that. I'd prefer to climb it, but I don't need to. But having kids, I definitely think that I would feel immense regret if I didn't. Identify the things that cause Future You 2 a lot of pain, things that you think will cause you regret. We're gonna put them in a new list called non-negotiables. With each of these non-negotiables, we're gonna stress test them. We're gonna say, if you had to do this in 1 year, how would you do it? Then add a really weird and hectic threat. And if you don't do this in 1 year, someone will cut off all your limbs and stick your fiance in jail for life. If I had to make a movie in a year to not lose my limbs and my fiance, yeah, I could 100% do it. With that energy, start to actually think about a plan, like a no bullshit, what would it take to do this? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you have to do it right now, and I'm definitely not saying that you have to do it in a year. I am just saying that you could. And that is where we find the true conflict. The pain. Because you could do it and because you're not doing it, we have pain. There is the pain of not doing it and the pain of doing it. The pain of living in an inferior cave or the pain of the 20-mile walk. Currently, whatever these vague big things are, the pain of doing them outweighs the pain of not doing them, and the scales are tipped to the complacent. But what this thought exercise is getting us to recognize is that pain is inevitable. It's just whether we want the pain up front or the pain later. I think it's Jersey Gregorek who said hard choice is easy life, easy choice is hard life, which means if you keep picking the easy path, you'll end up having a hard life that's really difficult. And if you keep picking the hard choices, you'll end up having an easy life. So as you go through your thought experiment, try think about the actual decisions that you would need to make in order to end up as Future You 1, not Future You 2. Now that's a lovely TEDx talk. Woo, I feel mildly inspired. What do I actually do, man? Don't worry, I got you. There is a practical component to this video too. Get ready for part 3, the cup list. This is another method I've come up with called the cup list. It's probably like the cheesiest name I think I've ever given to something. It's the closest that I'll ever come to sounding like a business book. But what it is simple. It's not a bucket list because buckets are big and a bit exciting. It's a bit smaller and it's a bit more mundane. The cup list is a list of everyday things that you are complacent about. It's the kind of ignorable stuff that always gets bumped to the bottom of your to-do list. It's things like fix that wonky sliding door, get a phone charger in the car, clean out and organize the junk cupboard. You get the idea. They're boring, they're not urgent, and if you don't do them, nothing bad really happens. It's the everyday problems that are easier to adapt to than they are to solve. Now, I recommend properly writing out this list, like actually making this list. Call it the cup list or call it something less corny, I don't know. Now, once you've written this list, assign time to it. Maybe it's a few Sundays here and there, I don't know. I'm not your dad. I recently did this experiment myself, and here's what I had on my list, and just a word of warning, it's very boring. Buy new pans, clear my SD cards, buy a Dyson vacuum cleaner. I've been wanting one for so long and my vacuum cleaner sucks. Maybe I am ready to be a dad. Finish the tattoo gaps on my forearms, catch up on all my accounting, and install a new handle on the second drawer down. Other than the tattooing, the whole list took me about a day and a half, which feels so silly when I think about how long these things have annoyed me for. And you know how I felt? Amazing. So damn good, man. And it's already had a significant improvement in my life, particularly around the house, so that's pretty cool. And sure enough, yeah, I filled in the gaps. They're still healing, but feels good. So this list, yeah, it's a feel-good exercise, but what we're really doing is we're creating a bias towards action. It's that micro to macro spiral that I've talked about. Your attitude to everyday complacency will end up becoming your attitude to big life complacency. Once you get the momentum of doing those things and realizing how much doing them feels better than not doing them, it'll translate to those big things on your list. Start with the basics and spiral up from there. Thanks so much for watching, and subscribe if you're new. I make videos like this every week, so if you got something out of this, stick around. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and other than that, have a gorgeous day. Catch ya.